Our guest this week is a proud Ballyfermot man who rang the bell on Wall Street. Ken Bowles became Tony Smurfit's trusted right-hand man as they fought for the very survival of the Smurfit business. A journey that ultimately culminated in a merger of epic proportions. Smurfit Westrock is a newly formed global powerhouse, bringing two industry giants together, and Ken takes us inside the deal that changed the packaging world forever. He reflects on a remarkable 31-year career, how he climbed through the ranks, what truly makes a great CEO-CFO relationship, and what it takes to operate at the highest level when the stakes couldn't be higher. Before we get started, a quick word about our sponsors, Philip Lee LLP. Philip Lee has evolved from a specialist regulatory practice to become a leading commercial law firm. Their partners are sector specialists, leading talented teams of lawyers in a collaborative, nurturing environment. Philip Lee's solutions help clients build better businesses, a better society, and a better planet. Find out more at philiplee.ie. Philip Lee, leading the way in commercial law. Our guest today is Ken Bowles, Chief Financial Officer of Smurfit Westrock, one of the world's largest and most influential sustainable packaging businesses, operating across 40 plus countries with deep roots in Ireland, Europe, the Americas and beyond. Ken sits at the financial nerve centre of this newly formed global powerhouse. Westrock was an American corrugated packaging company. In 2024, merged with Smurfit Kappa to become Smurfit Westrock. This deal reshaped the global paper and packaging industry and created a business with combined revenues north of $30 billion. Ken's role is as much architectural as it is financial. He has been at the forefront where decisions made echo across supply chains, communities, employees, and the environment. A very warm welcome to Business Plus Talks, Ken, which we're delighted to be partnering on with Philip Lee. Before we get into it, we had a quick coffee beforehand, and if you wouldn't mind taking us back a little bit, Ken, to your childhood, where did you grow up?
All the way back, so we're going back nearly 55 years now. I can still vaguely remember it. So I grew up in Ballyfermot for the first 5 years of my life, O'Hogan Road, and then moved to Clondalkin in 1976.
Okay.
And that's where I spent all my childhood. So, I think that the conversation we had revolved around, that how do you end up here from there? And I think the reality is, I've said this many times before, the S&P 500 CFOs don't tend to be grown in Ballyfermot or Clondalkin. There's many talented people who should be, but sometimes it's about chances and luck and drive. And look, I lived in a household that my folks, Noel and Philomena, drove all of us, me and my three sisters, to do the best and be the best. And I think that's sort of where you get to. So my wife would describe it as an inner fire I continue to have,
so
which I think is a compliment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it shapes you, has to.
And you went to, I see, a school called Moyle
Park College.
So, and it was quite interesting because I was looking at the site and it's unique by the sounds of it. Am I right? So it says, we aspire to educate students on wonder, justice and honesty, which you don't see, by the way, right? Personal integrity, independence and freedom, self-worth and esteem. That's quite different to a lot of schools.
Yeah, it didn't feel like that when you're going through it. It was a Marist college in the 1980s, so they also did a lot of discipline too. But look, the relationships I formed there in terms of friendships, still to this day, my role takes me all around the world, so I'm terrible at maintaining them at times, and my friends are very, very generous.
But a good grounding, right?
Good grounding, yeah. Like it was an all-boys school, which sometimes isn't the best place to go. I think.
I wouldn't say so. Yeah.
I've seen my two sons have gone to a mixed school.
All the way,
much better.
Yeah.
But yeah, the principles of the Marist Brothers are around those kind of topics, and yeah, I guess I did actually. Yeah, I had a great time there. It was a great set of lads. I was academically okay. I was a bit sporty, so like I managed kind of both sides of the house in that sense.
And how important, Ken, is it to, do you think, back yourself? Because if you think about your background too, right, and then to get into the role in which you're currently in, I'm sure you have to sort of look at where you're from, but then, as you say, an inner fight, or if there's a fire there, you've got to fight your way through a little bit harder, do you think? A
little bit. I think there's two bits. There's an element to back yourself and there's an element to leap of faith. Okay. And the back yourself is kind of harder sometimes, I think, than the leap of faith, because the leap of faith, in my case, I've been 31 years in various iterations of the Smurfit organization. I've had lots of people back me along the way or give me that kind of leap of faith along the way. But I think if you go back to sometimes the bits you're missing when you grow up is that there's no business background in my house, so I sort of I remember there's a guy from the north called Jerry Robinson who used to do these programs where he went to fix small companies.
Yeah.
I devoured those. Harvey Jones, Marcus Lemonis in the States. I ate those up. Read the Irish Times since I was 15. Kind of really odd child. Yeah, really odd child. Well, listened to the Smiths in my bedroom. So like it was kind of, but I always knew there was something else there that I needed to do. And look, through school and family.
Is that a CFO in the making early on though? It's like that you're tuned into business a bit differently.
A little bit, but probably more like I wanted to be I was more a failed musician, I think.
Oh, we can get onto that, yeah.
But it's, but no, it has to be somewhere there was something that just engaged me or interested me. It was a voracious reader,
Okay.
Early on, I knew I kind of had an aptitude for numbers, that kind of thing. So ultimately, when it came down to it, and I did the CAO in whatever year, 88, and I put down SEMA for the College of Commerce and Rathmines, that's where I ended up. Still had no plan in terms of what that would mean.
Yeah.
My elder sister got me a summer job in Welcome on Ayrton Road, as it was at the time, in an office. I thought, this seems okay. I'll figure it out from there. So a lot of it has been kind of backing yourself, but also maybe naivety to a certain extent and kind of trust in the system. When I went for the role in Smurfit, what was Jefferson Smurfit Group in 1994, I'd gone for 2 interviews on the same day. One with a company called Gateway 2000, who are not around anymore. So, and they offered me the job, and I still had one interview to go with the Smurfit Group. And I said, you know what? I think I'll hold on. And I did, and I got the role as a treasury manager, as it was. And I remember my boss at the time, John Mitchell, said to me, it came down to you and a guy who'd been on Know Your Sport.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so we went with you anyway. So
why do you think they went with you?
I think they thought I was related to Stanley Bowles, who played for QPR, and thought I might be good for the head office football team. But I don't know. Look, I think maybe it comes down to personality and fit.
Sure, yeah.
And myself and John to this day are still friends. So,
yeah.
But I think you gotta, and then I get in there, and look, I think people underestimate the fact that there's hard work involved. Like nothing is ever given to you. Yeah. If you think it's given to you, then you're mistaken. So I wouldn't underestimate the fact that I worked hard along the way either.
Yeah. So you mentioned it, and I actually had to go over, Ken, your LinkedIn, because just to triple check that you're coming up to 32 years.
Yeah.
In Smurfit and now Smurfit Westrock. You must love your job.
I most days. I think if you love your job every day, then you're probably having it too easy. I do, but I think it's actually more that I love the people I work with. Right, so my 32 years is marked by a lot of people, 25, 30 years. So it's a team that we've grown up together. We were all much, much younger when we started. So it's that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are there for a long time, right?
Yeah. And
it says a lot, eh?
It says a lot. It doesn't suit everybody. Like it's no different than any corporate culture. A lot of people have kind of come into the Smurfit Group and gone because it doesn't suit them. But something about it suited me. But also, it gave me lots of opportunity. Like in reality, I was never wanting for something to do, and it was a place with any of the bosses I've had along the way where if you put your hand up and wanted it, you could go for it. I mean, it was that kind of place. And actually, I think to be fair to Tony and I, it's still that kind of place where we try and make sure that if you have ambition, we'll support it. Because if you're willing to kind of do that for an organization, back to the original question, which is leaps of faith and backing yourself. Lots of time along the way, I backed myself to go into roles where you're like, I don't see an exit from this role necessarily. I think about that in particular I was the head of compliance for a number of years. There was no natural exit from that. I could have died as being the compliance officer in Smurfit Cap as it was, but I didn't. I kind of trusted the organization to kind of find the next role for me as I did then it was 2009 after that.
And within Smurfit Cap at the time, pre the merger, you had a mantra, and just wondering is it similar to this day, where it's create, protect, and care.
Yeah, that's our purpose. Yeah, our purpose remains. I mean, like I think organizations sometimes get caught up in the idea of mission and values, and our values are very strong. It's loyalty, integrity, respect, and health and safety for everybody. Loyalty is one we've had to work on very hard, because in a North American context with Westrock, loyalty doesn't sit the same. Our version of loyalty is we have to earn.
What do you mean by that now?
Well, loyalty, I think, in North America is where people follow you blindly and do things that they may not want to do. Our version of loyalty, which now is becoming apparent to our colleagues, is we have to earn your loyalty. Like if we want you to come to work every day, be your authentic self, do your best work, we have to earn that. It's not, we just can't, you turn up and there you go. It has to be earned. That's very important to us. But create, protect, and care. Listen, we're a sustainable business, but it's not because it's good for us. It's actually because it's the only way we do business. Like in reality, we take post-consumer waste and make new boxes. So our business has to be sustainable at the heart of it.
You see your average box 25 times?
25 times in life, yeah. And that's gone up over the years. You know, when I started, it was probably 5 or 6. I think systems get better, technology gets better, fiber gets better. So on average, we'll see the same box 25 times. And that's important because, you know, you're trying to always limit your impact on the environment from a materiality perspective. So what you take out, you should put back.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I want to get into the merger account. That's okay, because I think you said you blend the good bits of Smurfit with the good bits of Westrock, right? So you're bringing 2 industrial cultures, 2 operating systems, 2 investor bases together. But I know certainly for myself, most people don't care about the deal mechanics. They want to know what it feels like inside the deal, right? So everyone loves to know behind the scenes, the moments during those big deals. And to be fair, it was pretty seismic, right? And I'm sure there were many tense moments within it. Was there a boardroom moment, or was there a conversation, or was there a pivotal time that it just changed, or a mindset shifted, or?
Yeah, I think this is unfortunately going to be a slightly long answer, which you'll get used to with me over the next half an hour or so. We got to track back to the history of Smurfit a bit. And so we went private in 2002, heavy debt burden, came back to the public markets in 2007, still a lot of debt. So heavy burden on the balance sheet. Then the global financial crisis kicks in 2009, 8-9. Our share price at that time went down to €1.09. So in theory, you could have bought the equity of Smurfit Kappa for €200 million, which is kind of crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
A lot of debt, but still. Then you're going to roll through the next few years, and we begin to kind of get some momentum forward, making some progress. And I'm the group controller at this time. I haven't been made CFO yet. And then we get to kind of 2018. I am CFO. I've been CFO for about a year and a bit at that stage. And International Paper, who are our big North American peer, decide that they want to take a pop at us. They rang Tony on Valentine's Day, as far as I remember, which
that's pretty hardcore, isn't it?
Not the best Valentine's Days ever had. But, and then that started a process around, okay, well, this is a fight for survival. And we always felt the term we used was oil and water, and we always felt that culturally, in a way that ourselves and Westrock fit perfectly, ourselves and IP would never have fitted. A very different philosophy around things. Do
you back your gut a lot?
Yes.
It's not just all about numbers, right?
No, well, I'd never done a defense before. And only 10% of companies survive a defense. And actually Tony's instinct was the one that we backed most, which was, hold on a second, if you want to get rid of the bully, you walk into the playground and hit the bully. So we actually came out and told people that they'd made an offer for us. We'd put them completely on the back foot.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
okay.
Completely on the back foot. And which was against the advice of most of our advisors. But there's a good friend of myself and Tony's called Mark Kenny, who'll say to you, advisors advise and companies make decisions. So we made the decision, no, we're in a fight, we'll fight. And to your point about being inside the deal, the reality is that, when IP listed our synergies, big synergy around head office and people. So I walked back into Clonskee after the board meeting to a very nervous building. So I kind of operate on the model of the iceberg, which is...
Because I'd imagine, employees are sort of fearing, what's going to happen to me?
Exactly. And that's what you always have to be conscious of. Like it's sort of, we were having this conversation before, which is it's never about you. It's only about everybody else. So I brought everybody into our canteen up in Clonskee, and I said, look, we're in a fight. We will do our best, but be very, very clear. We've a good plan, all that kind of good stuff. My EA said to me, should we be worried? I said, when I worry, you worry. I said, I'm not worried.
And so you're shielding the staff from a lot of this, right?
Yeah, but that's the job.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's you don't get paid for the good days. You get paid for the bad days. And so we continued on, and that was very fraught. That was every day for that February to June 7th period. Broadly 24/7, thinking out, maneuver, next tactic, go and see an investor. I got to a place that every time the CFO of IP left an investor in London, I walked in the door behind him to say, listen, just so you know. And it became that we knew our investors. So we knew the story. And, there were days there where I remember sitting, I won't name the hedge fund in London, who told me, you'll never work again. What have you gone?
Really?
All that kind of stuff. Yeah, I walked out of it. And I remember Kieran, who works...
Sorry, why were they saying that?
Well, they wanted the deal done. You know, and I remember them being described as, these are guys who, you know, this is pennies in front of a steamroller, guys. They 9 times they get crushed. The deal that they make on, they make a lot of money. They just make a lot of money. They made money anyway. But that was the kind of tense nature of it. But I sort of, in a weird way, it sort of goes back to my roots in the sense of, look, I don't care who you are sitting in front of me. I really don't. You know, I'll have the conversation. But every time they made a comment, I talk about, you know, paperweight and basis weights of paper and the fluting and corrugated and all kinds of stuff that just drove them bananas. And they only ever had one meeting with me. That was it. Never came back again. Yeah. And then, and I will get to the point. But then on the 7th of June, IP walked away. And if you like, the moment that kind of defined that was, I think I was saying to you, myself and Tony were in London. We were walking back from dinner through Hyde Park thinking, okay, what does tomorrow bring? Will they put a fresh offer on the table or walk away? Because the date was there, the pussy date. Got a text to say they walked away. And we happened to be in the Rose Garden in Hyde Park at the time.
Smell the roses.
Smell the roses. And there's a couple there on a very romantic walk. And so these couple of glasses of wine in, fellas in suits said, would you mind taking our picture? So somewhere in our organisation, and never be published publicly, is a picture of myself and Tony smelling the roses.
I wish I could find that.
And you must smell the roses at some point. But also, we also decided that day that this must never happen again. We can't ever be in a position where we're so vulnerable to somebody. And so that began what we call the medium-term plan, which is, to your point, backing ourselves. We put an extra $1 billion into CapEx over the next 4 years to back ourselves. Market was skeptical. I remember standing up to announce it. The share price went down 5% before I spoke. We got it back. Yeah. We proved it, got momentum. Then you get to kind of 2019 and we think, okay, actually Westrock has begun to come into kind of some form of horizon now to think about. So from 2019 to 2024, essentially we had Westrock in our sights in some form or combination. But late 22, they got in touch to see if we could do something. Early 23, we figured that path and plan. September 23, announced it, and then a full year to actually do the deal. But, you know, I think to both boards' credit, very positive from the start, want to do the deal, but you are working through a lot of issues around governance and debt. I mean, we have 14 billion of debt.
But there must be a lot of tense moments though, right? Is this the right deal? Should we go through with it?
Yeah, every single day, I think, from January 22 to September 23 when the deal was public, because after that you're done, you're in, you can't do anything about it. I think myself and Tony had the same conversation, and we talk. The way we work is, you know, we have a phone call about 7:05 in the morning, what's going on, anything happening, and then we go off and do our stuff. That's how we do it. The same conversation every day, which is, are we doing the right thing? Is this the right thing to do? And it wasn't it wasn't kind of a facetious conversation. It was a real conversation around, are we sure? Like, you know, because this is betting the company, you know, and we'd built a beautiful franchise, you know, beautiful franchise. And we were putting, myself and Tony were putting this on the line. And look, when the board said you can go and do this, but you two got to stay around to see it through, you know, like it was.
But I also think that it's not just about that 5-year window. It's not from 2019 to 2024. It's sort of like, if you pair it back to when you started, you're sort of angling towards that, aren't you? So it could be 30 years in the making.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, for me, from treasury manager to CFO, is
exactly,
is a lot
you're
of
there
kind of,
for
is you know, group accountant, overseas financial controller, back into to kind of work on a deal, go off and do compliance, take on head of tax. Like it's that kind of weaving path towards where you get to. But ultimately, I think for Smurfit, and let's call it that because otherwise there's too many names over the years, for Smurfit, we always felt that our rightful place was to be at the top of the tree. Yeah. And the combination with Westrock puts us where we think we should be. Now we got to prove that out to investors. We got to prove it out to people. We feel we can do that. But fundamentally, we felt that, you know, our history, experience, the people, the culture deserve to be where we are now, which is the largest paper packaging.
And Ken, so you mentioned yourself and Tony's sort of relationship, right? What makes a good CEO-CFO relationship work so well? Is it the regular check-ins? Is it, as you say, like, let's just like strip it all back. We're just two people striving for a similar goal, right? Yeah. But obviously you're trying to build a culture and a purpose and a whole dynamic around that. So is there ways of working with Tony that make it just so much easier for everyone else around?
It's trust. Ultimately, like when I took on the role in 2016, Tony didn't know me that well. I was the group controller. We didn't spend that much time together. So
How did you get so close to him then?
I think the IP defense brought us really close, because the reality was we spent just about every moment of every day figuring out how we win that thing.
Because in a way you're going into battle, right?
It's absolute battle, and it feels like that.
Yeah.
And this was before Teams and Zoom, so you'd have that 5 o'clock every day. You'd have a conference call, 5 o'clock every day conference call with multiple beeps and who's in and who's not. It's kind of crazy times, but we did it. But for myself and Tony, I think it's all about trust. But also I think we're really good at checking each other in a sense of, if he thinks it's not the right thing, he'll say it, and I listen, and vice versa. In a sense that, it's not a case of, okay, Ken says no, then it's not it. We push each other a bit, because we're both pushing for the same thing, which is, it's. I think I was saying this to you earlier. We don't see this as kind of anything other than the way the All Blacks describe the jersey. The jersey doesn't have a name on it. You earn the jersey, and you wear the jersey until somebody else should wear that jersey. And that's sort of how I think about my role, which is, I got to leave this place in a better shape than I found it. That's the job. Or at least not a worse shape. That's the job. I think Tony sees that too. So that our legacy is that, for the next 100 years, create protective care is still the purpose, and we're remembered fondly by those who worked with us.
What part of the merger can sort of stretch you the most, do you think?
I think it was the sheer volume of work to be done beneath the surface.
Yeah, the unseen stuff.
The unseen stuff that, the finance team led by Irene, or the COSEC team led by Gillian, those two teams in particular had an incredible year. The competition clearance led by Niall and his team, Brian Marshall, they had a horrible year. Like, the sheer level of documentation that was necessary was kind of crazy, because we had to do convert our company into a US GAAP company. And the way US GAAP works is, the SEC rule says you go back to your inception date to start that process, which for us is 1934. So in theory, we were lucky. We had a break in 2002 when we went private.
I was going to say, that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. So we had to go back to 2002,
convert
our accounts to US GAAP, have them audited, and worked it all the way through. And the teams did that in the time available. Somebody said to me, when you want to get this deal done? And I said, I want to be done by the second quarter 24. And they said, it's not a hope.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't think you've met the Smurfit team. And we got it done on July 5th, 2024. And like I say, but that's the bit nobody really sees. And every room I've gone into since, where people said, well, give us something valuable in terms of what to do. I said, well, go and look at your inception date and figure out how you get US GAAP done in that period.
Yeah, and I think people might misunderstand the role of a CFO. And I kind of said at the start, you're probably as much of an architect as you are in the finance sort of department, right? Because you're conducting the org in a way.
Yeah, my calculator gathers dust. I pray for the day I could post the journal again, except it won't let me. I'd probably get it wrong. But no, I mean, my job is, I've at times I've described as kind of spinning plates.
Yeah.
And most of the time, though, it's actually just making sure that everybody around me kind of is moving forward in the right kind of direction, and has the kind of tools and space, most importantly, to do their job. Like, I'm not doing their job. They are well capable of doing that. But they all equally know, because we work together so long, where the guardrails are. So
you're not a micromanager?
No, I can't.
Don't strike me as one.
I can't be. I'm micro on many things. People will tell you I'm an absolute control freak, and I will know everything.
But you let people do what they need to do.
But they got to do it, because the reality is they are the experts, and they're in that role because of the experts. I've done most of the roles along the way, so I know exactly what it takes to succeed in that. But I'm really happy. I mean, everybody who's come into a role behind me is doing a whole lot better than I did. So the organization is well set in that perspective. But if I micromanage, then I'm not thinking about where we should be taking this organization, or how should we communicate on the outside, or where should we go next in the US to find investors. That's really my time.
Are there any, or many, I'll say maybe any, times you got it wrong?
I've never worried about business decisions.
You don't seem to stress the small stuff.
No, the things that, no, I think you're paid to make decisions, but you're paid to make a decision. you're not paid to make a good decision. You're paid to make a decision, and you don't always get those wrong in terms of, are there deals I've done I kind of go, wish I hadn't done that. Yes, maybe. Not the Westrock one. Are there ones where you get it wrong from that? I think the things that always pain me most with getting it wrong is around people, because ultimately, it is a person sitting in front of you, and or that you've either let down in some kind of way or just missed something along the way that you could have helped them. So those ones kind of where I kind of go, that I got wrong.
Yeah.
They kind of sit with me most, I think.
I always wonder why people fear other people, because you touched on it earlier on, someone sitting in front of you, they're just a person.
Yeah.
Why then fear that person? Is it because they've got the title, or they feel that they're in the driving seat, or they've got the power play there? I don't know. I always wonder around that, because to me, potentially, Ken's an age thing where you go, just don't care anymore. Whereas before, kind of growing up through the ranks and, getting the next title or role or responsibility, you're like, oh God, I can't sit in front of that person. That's, but now it's like, I'm bring it on.
Yeah, but that exists. I mean, I think I found that a bit actually when we did Smurfit Westrock. The perception of me going over to this new bunch of people is this kind of, big CFO of an organization, whereas everybody in Dublin knows I'm an Egypt, right? So it's kind of, and I remember the first day I took on the role of CFO.
And you don't look like Martin Freeman, by the way.
I do. Well, I wish I did. Maybe he wishes he looked like me. Similar style and taste of music. But I remember the first day I went home being CFO, and Elaine said to me, "How was your day?" And I was really lonely. Because everything's, you're far too busy now. And these were people, like I moved maybe 100 meters from my old office to my new one. And I remember after 2 days going over to the finance, I said, did nobody come and say hello? He said, but you're too busy now. I said, no, I'm not. So I think there is a fear factor with that, but people also misunderstand that there's a loneliness at seniority levels.
Absolutely.
Like you drive for all these roles, but when you get there,
it's upstream then.
It's upstream.
Yeah.
It's all eyes on you. So
Yeah.
it's sort of back to all those conversations you just had around, people are looking for clues around your behaviors that exhibit nervousness or not. And that can be hard because you do take all that home with you. You can't. There's no drawer in your desk that says I'm just going to leave all that there and walk out. That takes you through your weekend, takes you every night. It's every day.
So there's tons of growth moments, within the years gone by that you just live and learn, right? You just become a better version of you, better leader, better people person, as you say. Even reading people, to understand what I should say at a certain time,
Elaine would always say I tend to be a good reader of people.
Yeah.
I tend to be able to spot a BSer fairly quickly, and I tend
it's
to.
It's a key skill, right?
It is, and it's necessary because there's people you want to invest in, and there's people that just you don't want to invest in, and you figure those out fairly quickly too. But there is a lot around. The people piece is huge, and it can be underestimated in organizations.
Yeah. Well, culture breeds success, right?
Culture breeds success, but also I don't think where you see talent, you should encourage that talent and make sure they're aware that they are talent. I think we've changed. Organizations need to change and have changed a lot from the way they used to be. Where it was kind of bang the table, drive for everything. I'll tell you when you're ready, type of stuff. The simple reality is, generations coming up have a different view of what work looks like, different expectations of what they see in a leader. We talk a lot inside about authenticity and honesty and integrity and those kind of things. But the reality is, like, if I'm doing this today and I walk back into the office or go home and people don't see Ken in all those, the same Ken in all those three environments, then I'm not being true to myself. And I think the one thing, I would always say to people, I put my head in the pillow at night. I'm okay with that. I've been myself through the day, and I've been myself at home. To be perfectly honest with you, I'd be called out at home by either Elaine or the boys if it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I don't think I could live with that anyway. That's not being true to yourself is the worst thing you can be.
Can I ask a question around just that post-merger ringing the bell moment? Was that a sweet feeling?
It was, but in classic Ken fashion, I
saw a video of you, by the way, and you were doing an interview and you got hauled off.
That's right, yeah. My moment stolen. I've never dwelled on the positive things. I kind of go, what's next?
Okay.
And I remember myself, Elaine, Jack, and Adam, we went to New York on the Friday.
You didn't bring the dogs, no?
Didn't bring the dogs, no. They stayed at home this time. And I remember when the deal actually closed, which is 5 p.m. New York time on the Friday, we were in a CVS buying plasters or something. So that was how ceremonious that moment was. And I remember Sunday, I think Elaine said to me, how do you feel about tomorrow? I said, I have no idea how I feel about tomorrow. I hadn't processed it. I'd spent 18 months getting to the finish line. Like it was, people say 24/7, 365. That was, it was every consuming moment to get a deal done. So no concept of what it would feel like. But then when I walked around the corner onto Wall Street and you see this huge corrugated bull and this huge sign with Smurfit Westrock, you kind of go, okay, all right,
we got a live
now
one
we
here.
get it.
Yeah.
It was very special. Like it was very special for everybody involved. My two boys who, would rail against capitalism on a general basis, they were trying to juxtapose Rage Against the Machines, Bulls on Parade versus being in the stock exchange. But they got to write on the wall.
That's a proud moment for their
absolutely. And listen, we're memorialized, so all our names are on the wall there. We'll never not be on the walls of the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
But in a weird way, it's only the start.
Okay.
The real work starts now. Like it's nice to ring the bell, but delivery is what happens next for organizations, and the stock market forgets very quickly.
Yeah. Something I also pulled out as well is you mentioned, which I really like as a sort of mantra as well, is you can work for an organization or be part of one. And I think you've been part of one for near on 32 years, which is why you're still there, right? But why a lot of people are still there. And that sets a precedent for an awful lot of other companies to kind of go, geez, we can do this too, because I think the youth of today, Ken, are coming through thick and fast, but they hop around jobs quite a lot, and I don't know if I think your lads are in college, are they? But
one's college, one's leaving cert.
Yeah. What does a job look like for them into the future? And I know they're into music as well. So, but you're kind of saying to yourself, it's never going to be the same. It's sort of different now how the world works. But maybe Smurfit Westrock, as you know now, is a unique fish in that sense.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, maybe we're somewhat of a cult. People stay that long, and I say to people, look, maybe nobody else would have me. So maybe I think where you're supposed to be in that sense. I think organizations will change. They have to change. I don't think. The model of organizations that exists now is not the one that existed 50 years ago. But I think fundamentally, if you keep the idea that people are at the heart of it, and actually the community you serve is at the heart of that too. So we have kind of a maxim inside that says, when you get to the end of your career, you must be able to look back and say, I did good. And that's not the profit motive or I generated a ton of cash flow. That's it in my community in which I operated, whatever corrugated plant or paper mill all around the world. What did I do locally?
But there's a purpose aspect to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's hugely empowering for people. The idea that they can go to work every day and do the job we need them to do, but also be impactful locally. Whether that's kind of renovating a hall in Pirpatinga in Brazil, or whether that's kind of, building a playground in Rizzolo in Italy, or whether it's kind of, stuff around Dublin or wherever we are. Whether it's sponsoring kind of, events or, the Smurfit Westrock cycling team, the ladies team in the UK, or supporting the Druid here in Ireland. It's about, we're a big organization with limited resources at times, but it can't just be about the profit motive. That's not legacy. That's just profit. And we get that. So, and our managers get that. And it's part of what we're growing in terms of, so to your point about, our organization, people who come into it, they either buy into that or they don't. And if you don't buy into it, you probably don't stay that long. And you certainly won't be successful.
How much, Ryan, can control the controllables, which is quite simple in one sense, but I mean, you can look at your attitude and mindset, or your effort and the prep that goes into it, and even nutrition, sleep, and the choice that you make. That plays it's probably underrated, but it probably plays a big role in how you go about a day-to-day job, doesn't
it? Absolutely. Look, I think my key skill is the ability, being modest now, which is not like me, but my key skill is the ability to kind of take in information and assimilate it quickly. There's a lady I work with called Kira O'Sullivan who'll send me something, say, do not appear at my door in 2 months' time because you've just read it and now you want. I haven't read it yet myself.
Okay.
But that helps a lot. So the ability to consume information and get through it quickly it has to be a skill.
Yeah.
I remember my predecessor, Ian, always said, look, there's 10 things on your desk. 5 of those, not doing them will get you fired. 5 won't.
Yeah.
You know the 5 to do. So a lot of it's about priority. And that can be equally task setting for people, or
that's experience led though, isn't it? You kind of know which ones need to be dealt with first and foremost.
Absolutely, yeah. You know which fire to fight, and you know, look, there's stuff over there that can wait, and it can wait for weeks or months maybe. But I think that ability to kind of prioritize whatever it is, people or tasks or something. But if it's a people issue, it comes right to the top of every pile you do.
Yeah.
And if it's a real business issue, you get to it. But it is about kind of, you've only got so much time in the day. And the trick really with a combination like ours is you go from being a huge project where you're doing 24/7 to, I got to figure out how this turns into a working day now. So, and particularly with a North American organization where you got time zone issues. So like, we're getting our last emails at 11 midnight. You can say, okay, I got to stop that. And if I don't
because
stop
of the time difference?
Because of the time difference. They're coming to end the day and they're still sending stuff.
Yeah.
And if I don't stop it, then my teams are not reflecting that. If I'm sending emails at 11 o'clock at night, people feel, back to your point with the boss thing, I have to work like that too. Like you said, no, you don't.
What are there, 100,000 people in the new
100,000 people, yeah. 100,000.
Decent balance though, because I know you're focused on female hiring as well, and talent.
Yeah, it's I think we're about 25% females throughout the organization, a good cohort at the senior levels. But you're never really done. I mean, it's no more than any big industrial industry. It's gone on a journey over the last quarter of a century where, go back 25 years, I wouldn't have wanted my sister, my mother, Elaine, to work in factories. Maybe didn't even have female toilets on the floors, for example.
Okay.
Now, it's they're much better places to work and encouraged in. But even things like robotics and automation makes all that kind of stuff easier for all genders to kind of work in. So no, it's a big focus. I'm still the gender community champion for Smurfit Westrock.
Ken Bowles switches off by cycling, does he?
Cycling while listening to music, yeah.
Vinyl records.
Yeah, there's about 4,000 at the last count.
4,000
and growing.
Vinyl records. And your kids are following suit.
Yeah, both. I'm living vicariously through Jack and Adam. They're both wonderful musicians and both heavy into music. So our house and Elaine can't be let off on this one too. Elaine also plays some instruments and listens to music. So it's basically something somewhere between the Partridge Family and the Von Trapps. There's always music going. But that's the joy of it, right? Like
But you live a very simple life, right?
Yeah, but it's always been simple. But like it's fun. Like the merger kind of takes a lot of time out of you, and so I'm probably more tired now than I've ever been in my career.
Can you leave stuff at the door the second you go home?
No, I can't. That's very, very hard. But I'd say, have I learned in the last year to focus better on my mental health? Maybe. I didn't, back to the iceberg thing, I didn't speak properly, I think, in the mid-40s early. I certainly a few years into CFO, I was still bottling everything up.
Really?
Until Elaine broke me open and made me speak.
It happens, I think, of men in their 40s. Isn't it sort of that? There's nowhere for it to go.
Bar out.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough that Elaine is both a qualified accountant and actually worked for large organizations, so kind of gets the world, but also kind of retrained herself as a psychotherapist. So she has all the skills.
So she brought it at you?
She brought it at me, yeah. And because Elaine,
close to home, but maybe good.
Apps perfect, yeah. Because it's not.
You didn't have to pay for
it. You have to pay for it in certain ways, yeah. But it's more that it's someone to listen. I think sometimes people make the mistake of trying to give answers and trying to give you advice, and that's not what you want. You just want to get it out.
Yeah.
So Elaine knows when I'm getting to that place where she goes, okay, come on, and that's a great place to be.
And is it an ongoing thing that or is it sort of it's
daily?
It's out now.
Daily.
No, but it's out now. Like that's a good feeling though when it is sort of released.
Absolutely.
Into the world, you're like, oh, well, that's a load.
Yeah, but the guilt aspect of that is you kind of feel like I'm placing it on somebody else.
Yeah.
Like I've now placed my problems onto somebody else, but she doesn't feel like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's more.
It's also like writing stuff down. When you write it down, it gets it out of your
gone.
brain. Yeah, it's gone.
But you sort of forget the weird impact you have. If you're keeping all that in, everybody else in your family thinks they've done something on you because of your humor or mood sometimes. And that's just a terrible place to be. Yeah. Now, it wasn't that kind of, but you could just tell. I go quieter. And then I kind of go into myself a bit. And so, you know, it's a case of she'll walk me into a room, sit me down the chair, stick on a record, stick a guitar in my hand, whatever it might be. They all know my happy places, you know, give me a sprocket to clean, all that kind of stuff. It'll all work. But yeah, I like to keep it simple. I ride bikes.
How many bikes you got?
If Elaine's listening, it's less. It's, oh my God, all I have to do is my head now. 2 gravel bikes, 2 BMCs.
So there's multiples. That's
There's
where we're going here.
about 7, and then the parts for a few more.
You can lose your life, can't you? And a lot of money on bikes.
Yeah, but you know what? You can't. And you know this too, Dave. You can't underestimate the feeling of when you get home, tired off a bike, and sit down and have a cup of tea, and that tiredness that comes over you and that exhaustion is just beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. So that is the downtime for Ken, or let's say the mental health aspect of switching off, is music, a good family around you, and a little bit of cycling.
Yeah. It's boringly simple, and either listening to music or rooting through Spin Dizzy in town, whatever it might be. It's
the older I get, the more I want to simplify it.
It's not complicated. No. It can't be. I can't do complications. There's limited time. I don't have enough time to spend with all the people I want to spend it with. Because clearly travel's a huge part of the
job. Which becomes more prominent as you get older. You kind of go, the time I have, I need to spend it with those I really enjoy. Yeah,
exactly. Like it's sort of back to, you know, the friends in school that we met when I was 12. We spent every single day until we were probably...
Still got mates from school?
Yeah. Still keep in touch. I'm the worst at it, to be honest with you, but they keep dragging me back in, the fools that they are. But we were inseparable as a kind of a core 5 or 6 people until probably I was 30, and then the career takes off slightly, and you travel more and you're away more, and the projects consume more, and so when you get back, you become selfish about your time with family versus friends. And you know, we moved over this side of the city versus where we were. So, but then unfortunately, when you get to our kind of ages, the reasons to be together are slightly more somber than they used to be in terms of passing away or something. My friend did this year. So they kind of
it really does put manners on you, doesn't it?
It does, and it forces you to kind of rethink everything in the sense of, you know, the why you do these things and making the balances right, making the right choices.
But you also can't work. You know, you don't. You work to live. You don't live to work.
Yeah.
And I know there's obviously times where you have to bunker down and do that. But again, if you strip it all away, and you know, you've people passing around you, or you know, they're stressed with the nines, and it's driven by a work scenario or whatever. And again, that people, you're sort of going, I have to get this done, and your brain's in overdrive, and then suddenly, boom.
It's not healthy.
No.
It's not healthy for anybody, and it's not healthy for an organisation to run at that pace either, because people just get burned out.
Yeah.
And won't stay.
You said you're an avid reader. Any books of worth that you would impart on the listeners, or podcasts you listen to?
I tend to read, apart from your own podcast, Dave. Not that
of course,
many.
Yes. Thank you.
Books at the moment, I'm reading, there's 2 on the go at the moment. Well, there's more than 2, but the 2 I read at the moment is Technological Revolution, which is about how social media has turned from being generally technology in the 50s for the good of society and everything else, where it's less so now. And in a complete flip, Kevin Rowland's from Dexy's Midnight Runners autobiography, Bless Me Father, which is an incredible read.
Okay.
Very honest.
I have one question before we sort of wrap things up, and I ask you a question from our last guest, is when you retire, Ken, and you reflect back on your career, what will give you most pleasure?
I think it's when I see the people I've worked with, mentored, developed, get to where they should be in terms of their careers. And the person who sits in my seat after me, that they're ready, fit, and able for that, and I've left the place in such a state that they're, you know, it's not that kind of drawer in Downing Street says, sorry, I've spent all the money. It's got to be that. And look, I'd like to think that I when I leave Smurfit Westrock, whatever day that is, that it's viewed as the organization that we think we are, which is that one with, purpose around it, people-led, place in society around sustainability and good, assured.
And people starting out early in the careers, you just go, look, back yourself, work hard,
find people to talk to. It sort of goes back to I didn't have business people around me to talk to. So
I was going to say, there's no mentors around that would have guided you.
No, not until I got into my career in a big way. And then there's lots of people now I can talk to, and I've been very lucky. If I look at the people I worked with along the way, and people on the board of Smurfit Gap, but the likes of Gary McGann, John Maloney, Lee Mamani, you can't, those three alone, Tony himself, there isn't any substitute for that level of experience and just sit and listen. And I can still call on all those today if I needed to have a chat, and others outside, that I can call on. So it's only later on, I don't think I would have known how to find a mentor in the early days. I kind of trusted my internal kind of champions and the people who knew I was good inside, and are still friends today. So mentors, and maybe there's a bit of kind of, back to that, would I speak to a mentor? Would I be willing to be honest about my failings or those? I'm not so sure it would have been. Again, I think a lot of that comes with age, a lot of that comes with experience, and a bit with, do you know what? I'm nearly 55. I really couldn't care less anymore.
Don't give it to
what
us.
people think of me.
Excellent. So, as you know, we ask each guest a question. I think we have a bit of a doozy for you here, right? As I think it feels sort of especially relevant given the scale of responsibility of your job as well. So this is the question. Today, you call yourself 10 years from now. You ask the person you've become, what do I have to be careful with? And what word of encouragement or direction can you give me today?
That is a doozy. It's your health. Don't ignore the signs. It's quite simple. I listened to Dave too. He was in the same track. I've had a lot of health checks this year on bits and pieces where I ignored some early signs. Everything's perfectly fine, good, all grand, but still, I remember going to I went to my doctor with a kind of a bit of fluid on the elbow, and I said, listen, while I'm here, and that led to a string of things, which all thankfully turned out to be absolutely fine. But don't ignore the small signs around your health, because small signs become bigger signs very, very quickly. And that really, I think, again, as you get older, that becomes, and don't ignore your fitness either. Do something active, keep the brain active, keep the body active too. I don't think that's going to be a problem for me in 10 years' time. If I get to retire, it'll be more bikes rather than
You're still cycling a lot, right?
Yeah, still cycle a lot. Try and get out both Saturday and Sunday. Try and do 2.5, 3 hours each time.
Nice. Coffee style spins, or you do push yourself?
No. I'm hardcore and old school. It's don't look at the weather before you go, and no, you get your reward at home.
That's scone and coffee. Yeah, love it. Any question or a question that you would like to leave the next guests? I'd
probably continue the theme of mental health. I'd probably say, when was the last time you looked in the mirror and were honest with yourself about your mental health?
These questions are getting better and better. Okay. Well, Ken, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This chat has been far more than finance. I think from integrating one of the largest industrial mergers of our time to making decisions, I think that will impact for decades. And you've also reminded us that best leaders aren't defined by certainty about how they think and listen and show up actually when it matters most. Oh yeah, and one more thing, it doesn't matter what side of the tracks you're born into, you too can make it. So Ken, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.
A quick word about our sponsors, Philip Lee LLP. Philip Lee has evolved from a specialist regulatory practice to become a leading commercial law firm. Their partners are sector specialists, leading talented teams of lawyers in a collaborative, nurturing environment. Philip Lee's solutions help clients build better businesses, a better society, and a better planet. Find out more at philiplee.ie. Philip Lee, leading the way in commercial law.